Angelo, and I'm at the Cyber Youth Summit here in Singapore, Marina Bay Sands. A whole day full of industry talks, forum panel discussions, and of course a lot of networking opportunities for the youth here in Singapore. And with me today, I'm very pleased and very privileged to have Aaron Ang, who is the Chief Executive of the Cyber Youth
Collective.
Cyber Youth
Yes.
Collective here in Singapore. And he will be sharing with us some of the highlights on the panel discussion on the next generation of cyber defenders. So thank you very much, Aaron, for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the energy is fantastic. The atmosphere is electric. And tell us, how different is this summit from your typical sort of cybersecurity conference?
Well, at least for me, most of the cybersecurity conferences I've attended, the moment you step in to not only just step into the venue, just moving up the escalator to the level that the conference is attending, you look around, everyone is dressed in a suit,
Right.
everyone is a working professional, they look like some high-level executive from a certain company, but the moment you come up the escalator to the third floor where we are at this afternoon, you realize that the profile is very different. It's much younger.
Right.
We have some people who look really lost, not because that they don't know what they're doing,
Okay.
but because they have never attended such a conference before.
Oh, right.
So this conference is really unlike most of the other cybersecurity conference, whereby the main idea is to either sell products or to promote certain ideas. But this conference is really for youth. What about youth? So in Singapore especially, we do have youths, who actually go, they take a certain degree, they take a certain course, or they are looking for an alternative to do what exactly should I do with my career. They're exploring, they've heard in the media which career is good, which career is that, but there is no experiential opportunity for them to kind of find out, what this particular career is like. And that is why Cyber Youth Singapore, and that is why this summit exists. We want to be able to create this ecosystem and this platform for the youth to come in, speak to industry partners, listen to these discussions, and kind of find out what it's really like to be in that industry. So it's kind of an immersive ecosystem experience, and this is how this entire summit is designed. So that's one. And most of the summits, or conferences, when it's designed, it's kind of like from the top down. Yeah, so like you get, for example, if you're the CEO of a company, it's like, how do you want this summit to be? But for this, we actually consulted youths in Singapore. So how would you like CYS summit to be? So they gave their inputs, and what you see today is not something that CYS, not something that people like me conceptualize. It's something that the youths came up with, the idea they wanted to see, and we enabled, this idea and put it to fruition. So in that case, this is how special it is, and of course, if you look at the exhibition area, there's not really some area where you're selling your products or brand awareness. It's kind of like, when they go there, the only reason the booth partners are there is for the youth to actually speak to them and understand what it's like to have a career in the industry. So it's really youth-centric rather than a corporate or a technology-centric conference. The heart of this is really for the youth and to be able to give them a chance to explore what they want to do in the future. So I would say this is the key differentiator between this conference and the rest of the conferences. Yeah.
Right. Oh, and of course, youth are at the forefront of technology nowadays. They do a lot of gaming.
Yep.
They use technology for a lot of their online social life,
Yep.
for school, right? And so, what kind of special insights do they bring? You talked about that they have a lot of input into this
Yes.
summit. So, what kind of special insights do they bring?
So, for the youth, as you mentioned, they are at the forefront of technology. They are better at technology, even better than me in a lot of cases. And I do realize that their thinking, the way they think, is very different from how we see the world. Let's just give an example. So, for example, we had the panel early on this morning. Just sharing the panelists, it might get a bit awkward at the end of the session when we have the Q&A because no one might want to ask any questions. But honestly, at the end of the session, we had a lot of the youths who came forward to the microphone and asked the question. So the value and the insight, we brought to this, a lot of times the adults, the adults or the older people like me, we're a bit more reserved, we're like, will this work? Will this not work? But the youths bring us a perspective whereby they push the boundaries, they dare to step out and actually explore. And when we design a summit like that, we have a lot of constraints, a lot of boundaries that we are aware of and are worried about. But from the youth, they come up to us and tell us, this is what we want. Help us to explore to what we need to do and what we want to see. So it's I guess a lot of times as people who have been in the industry for some time, we place certain restrictions on ourselves. We think the world is like that when it's actually not the case. And I think this is where the youth bring in fresh perspective. They bring in the passion and they bring in the inspiration. So after being in the industry for some time, when things get tired, and then look at the youth, they are so passionate. I mean, they this is their vacation time. They could be anywhere, or they could just be sleeping at home, but they choose to take time to come down this morning to talk to us. I think it speaks a lot, and that's something that if anything, inspires me.
Right. Yeah, the energy is really electric, as I was saying before. So you talk about the panel discussion, and the panel is about the next generation of cyber defenders. So we're talking about the youth being the next generation of cyber defenders. And of course, around the world, many different countries realize there's a severe skills shortage when it comes to cybersecurity. And many are moving upstream to, engage the youth and also children at a younger age to understand more about cybersecurity. So what kind of cyber threats do you think that the youth face today that we may not face? Of course, there's phishing, which is common to everybody. But I was thinking maybe, cyberbullying is something that's more unique to youth than to, say, people of our generation.
Interestingly, when every one of us think of cybersecurity, in the past, when you talk about cybersecurity, the first thing anyone would mention is, do you have an antivirus software at home? Do you have a firewall at home? Well, if you have an antivirus software, if you have a firewall, well, you're safe. But these days, as you mentioned, cybersecurity has evolved. It's not really so much, well, of course, the threats are still there, phishing, ransomware. These are real threats, and they are still there. But in the world of cybersecurity, it has kind of evolved to something that's a bit more sinister, I would say. So what do I mean? As you've mentioned, things like cyberbullying. Now, to us, it might just be, it's just a small little thing that we just fit in to talk about in school. But this, we have read in the reports of how teenagers have actually committed suicide.
That's right.
Because they were targeted online. Someone made a post about them, and it affected them so much that they took their own lives. So it's no longer just about antivirus, about firewall. It's no longer about my computer got hacked. I got a ransomware. It has transcended that boundary to something that's a bit more human, that kind of affects lives directly. And one of the things, for example, I was just sharing in the panel these days. Now, if I were to hack a company, there are two ways we can go about doing it. The first way, we can sit behind a computer, wear a hoodie, eat a pizza, and bang away at our keyboards trying to get into the firewall of the company, which these days is going to be pretty difficult because everyone wants to protect their systems, right? So the other way to do it is to do it a bit more in a soft approach. So perhaps, I might befriend a person that works at a certain company. So let's say if you're working there, I might befriend you, get to know you, and from there, perhaps one day I might ask, could you, this is a thumb drive. It doesn't work at home, Could you try it on your laptop? And when you actually insert the thumb drive, that thumb drive actually plants a malware on your computer that can spread to the entire company as well.
Okay.
So it's moved from a technical, hard angle to a human, softer angle. And, with the emergence of AI, that everyone's just talking about ChatGPT, So it's going to be that kind. So cybersecurity is not so much, it is still, but it has evolved to something that's a bit more human, it's a bit more personal. And of course, if you're talking about the technological angle, everything is connected these days.
That's right.
So some of us might or might not know, like your traffic light system is connected via a network. So that in itself is also a security concern. So, you've seen it in the movies, Fast and Furious and what have you. And if someone were to hack into the traffic grid, and the kind of mayhem it can cause. So it kind of just moved from that, when you in the past, I got a virus, my computer, my files are deleted, to something that can actually affect lives. And of course, you've mentioned cyber wellness and even scams. So
That's
scams
right.
is another huge thing that's going on these days. And interestingly, research has shown that you would think that people who are a bit less tech savvy, these are the people who might fall into scams. But research has actually shown that it is usually the tech savvy people the younger generation that actually fall into scams.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
interesting.
yeah, so it's a combination of factors. It could be competence, thinking I'm in the cybersecurity industry, I would never be a
Right.
victim of scam. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So there's always this saying in cybersecurity, you never get too complacent. The moment you stand up there, in front of an audience and say, my company is 100% secure, it can never get hacked, the next day you'll get hacked. So it's a complacency is a problem as well. So that's the world of cybersecurity is involved from banging on a keyboard in a computer to psychology to human nature. Yep.
So talking about the evolution of the threats and some of the special or rather unique threats that the youth might face. So you talk about cyberbullying and
Yep.
Potential sort of threats to life.
Yep.
How do you suggest that the youth today become a cyber defender? What kind of skill set do they need to have?
So when we think of a cybersecurity, a lot of youth these days will think that if I want to be a cybersecurity defender, technical skills number one.
That's right.
I need to know how to
Exactly.
hack. I need to know how to
That's
know
right,
my way.
that's right.
But if you actually heard, in the panel earlier on this morning as well, the employers out there are actually not. I mean, it's still important. Obviously, if you are a cybersecurity defender, you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you'll just be lost in your job every day, right? But it's really not that. That's the key to a successful career. So what they are looking for, as in all careers, is really your attitude and your aptitude. So even if you are new to the industry, the ability to learn, the ability to adapt, and really to step up and take that step when it's not comfortable for you. So technical functionalities aside, I personally believe that technical skills can be picked up.
Yep.
Everyone can learn how to count, for example. But whether you're willing to learn and
right.
what is the extent that you will go just to learn how to count is what really matters. So even if someone with no technical skills, no technical background, but he or she has the passion, he or she has the right attitude, the skills will come, and he or she will go after the skills. And that's what if in terms of you asking me how do they be a cyber defender, one of the first things that they can do is really get immersed in the industry itself. So it could be as simple as coming to a conference like this.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, CYS is not learning conference around. It could be as simple as attending workshops. There's a lot of free workshops on cyber, and just to understand a bit more about the industry. So from there, it helps you to kind of navigate as well, to kind of know, is this something that you're really interested in? Take for example, I used to be a teacher before, as I shared.
Yes.
So I used to think that I love teaching, that teaching is my thing. But then when you're in it, you kind of realize, maybe this is not what I expected or not something I want to do. So this kind of also gives the youth a chance to really know, is this something that you want to do? And it's perfectly fine to change course along the way. So if someone would ask me the number one tip for youths to get into the cyber industry, to be a cyber defender, get involved with us. Do anything you can, whether in your school, join competition, and a lot of these are free. I wish I had such opportunities when I was studying. And of course, the next step, once you know this is a direction that you want to go in, the next step would really be to look at the skills. What are the skills that I need, and how do I get the skills? It might not necessarily be a certificate. It could be doing an internship. It could be doing a project. So that's some of the advice that I can give to youths who are looking to be cyber defenders. Yeah.
Now, I want to pick up on the point that you mentioned you're an educator. You were a teacher before. Well, you're still teaching in different ways yes. Right now. And so when it comes to cybersecurity, many people say, you have to think on your feet, you'll be able to problem solve, have the tenacity to, as you say, to persevere and, so as an educator, how would you advise other teachers when they are, facing a classroom of youth or kids to teach them cybersecurity? What are the kind of things that they need to sort of pay attention to?
So I guess when we talk about cybersecurity, a lot of times we have this notion that you just give everyone the 10 commandments. This is what you should not do. This is what you should do. More often than not, we all know what we should or we should not do. Do not click on links, for example. I mean, you have heard it so often in the newspapers, in the radio, that you actually know what you should or should not do. The idea here is to allow the students to experience certain things. Now, what do I mean? So when you actually think from the angle of the student, so a lot of times when we teach or when we spread cybersecurity awareness, we think from the angle of the defender or the angle, or the angle of the authorities. Now this is happening. So how do I not have something happen? I need to educate the people on this. So we have a 10 steps now how to do that. But when you're actually teaching cybersecurity awareness, it is not so much the do's and don'ts that matter. Those are important, but it's more the heart of the matter. Let me just give you an example. When we talk about scams, we always have advisories that do not click on links. For example, we always have advisories that do not give out your information over the phone call. No, but we have to understand that cyber criminals are not stupid. The tactics will evolve. If you shut something down, the next day they would think of a creative way to get into scams. And to be honest, I personally am, well, it's not a good thing, but I'm amazed by the creativity of cyber criminals and people who do scam attacks. The kind of ruses that you can come up with is just beyond me. Now, so when we actually teach cybersecurity to a classroom of students, for example, the important thing to know is to, first of all, we need to speak their language. Well, so if you are talking about things that they don't use, like Facebook, these days people don't really use Facebook. I mean, we do, but it's you need to know what the kids are doing, and you need to know how they're interacting with the online environment. So that's one. Secondly, it's not so much about the do's and don'ts, but to teach them about the psychology behind cyber criminals, scams. I always share this during, so I do a lot of cyber training for corporates as well. So one of the things that I always share with them is, now think of it this way, just drop the idea of a cyber attack, for example. Think of it this way: today I'm going to rob a bank. How am I going to rob this bank? Am I just going to barge in the door with a gun and it costs a so clearly, if you are thinking straight, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to have to sit outside, surveil the place. How many cameras do I have? And what would be the natural thing to do is to look for the weakest link. If I know, this security guard goes and takes a smoke break at 6 p.m. So this is my window of opportunity to rob a bank, for example. So in cybersecurity, it is the same. We don't just tell them, okay, this is not what you should do, but we teach them the psychology of how it works. We show them this is how cyber criminals think. Then in that sense, how can you as a youth, combat this? And I've realized more often than not, when we do this, first of all, the youth are more interested. Now, if you're just giving them a list of do's and don'ts, that I've heard this 10,000 times, it actually helps them to and it's interesting because they can actually come up with more solutions that we can ever think of. And that's how I believe we should approach cybersecurity awareness, education and training. So teach them, the baseline, these are things that you should never do no matter what the case, and then help them to understand the psychology, behind these attacks. And even if the tactics evolve, they still remember the psychology and it kind of rings a bell. And as they progress, that this is something that I probably shouldn't do. I should be more be careful of, be aware of. Yep.
Well, absolutely fascinating insights. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
So one last question,
Sure.
if I may. So for takeaway for today, for the youth and also for the industry partners, what is one takeaway for each you would recommend from today's summit?
Well, I guess more or less the same point, but from different angles. So for
That's
the
right.
youths, I had the opportunity to chat with a couple of youths who were just on my way out from the panel early on. So some of them came up to me and they actually mentioned that they came from a pathway whereby it's not your conventional education pathway. So they didn't really do well in their national exams, for example, and they didn't land in a very good course that allows them to get a diploma. So they landed in a course that that they kind of just awarded them with a technical certificate, for example. But they are this particular gentleman who came up to me. He was just sharing. He couldn't get into a cybersecurity course with whatever he had at additional exams. He literally had to knock on doors, go to his lecturer and tell them, hey, I'm really interested in this. I don't want this course that I've been allocated to. And he was persistent enough to convince the lecturer to give him a chance at the interview, and he met the head of school, had an interview, and he showed, these are some of the activities that I've taken part in relation to cybersecurity. I'm really passionate about it, and I really want to do this. So, and eventually now he's studying cybersecurity. He has passed his technical certificate course. He's now doing his diploma in Singapore. So, to the youths out there, I guess in any industry, in a society, even like Singapore, any society that's rapidly changing, one thing to remember is it's never the end, no matter where you are at your education pathway. So personally, I failed my A-levels many years back, and that's a true story. So at that time, I was also pretty lost. So it's never the end of the road. If the thing is that if you give up on yourself, then that's really the end, because you would then just think, I'm just resigned to my fate. I'm not going to do anything to change that. But if you never give up and you always have that that mindset that there is always hope at the end of the tunnel. Yes, it's not going to be easy. It might sound cliche, but that will kind of just open up the pathways that you can explore. And I think for youths these days, amidst all the competition, amidst what's going on in the world today, amidst all the negativity that you see in the news, the notion that wherever you are in your life, as long as you don't give up on yourself, you can actually make it in life. We've seen lots of success stories on that as well, and truly, as I shared, Cyber Youth Singapore is purely a voluntary organization. We all do this on a volunteer basis, not pay a single cent. Why do we do this? Apart from encouraging more to join the industry, these youths truly inspire me. I have gone through moments like this many times where I think that these guys are amazing, and that kind of just makes us carry on to do this for the youths and for the industry on the other hand. And I think more and more industries are picking up this. So it's really not hiring managers. It's really not just about the technical certifications that the youth has. I do know that there is a baseline in hiring. We're looking for a certain standard. I'm totally cognizant of that. But the idea here is that even if I don't have the requisite baseline, now if I have an alternative pathway, but I can show that whatever I've done in this alternative pathway is good, if not even better than what you are traditionally looking for, give them a chance. I'm not asking you to actually take them into your company. You could just hire them as an intern, at least give them a chance to get through to the interview where you have a chance to speak to them and find out a bit more. Because if you don't do that, to be very honest, you are losing out on a talent that could eventually make it big in your company. So I think on the industry perspective, we should never discount youths, no matter how young they are. These days, youths are really amazing. I've seen how 13-year-olds can actually do very well at cybersecurity competitions. Than a lot of seasoned practitioners in the industry. So for the industry, I think we all have things to learn from each other. And it might sound weird, but youths have a lot to teach us. We used to think that youths are, they are just interested in play.
We're old and wise.
Yeah, I know everything. Don't tell me what to do. But at the end of the day, we really can learn a lot from that. And if nothing, their resolve and their stories inspire us. So give the youth a chance. Don't discount them because they currently seem not to be all together. Eventually, the passion and this generation that we're talking about, the Gen Zs. Is it still the Gen Z? I have no idea what it's called now. I think it's called the Gen Z. Yeah, but the Gen Z, they are a different breed. Not in a bad way. They actually have it in them, and these people who, as you mentioned, are going to be the leaders of the society in the future. And I do believe that we are looking at a generation that's going to make a huge difference in the world that we live in. Yeah.
Yes, so basically be open-minded,
yes,
right, and not use the way that we have our mindset to make an assessment on what the skill set, and also for the youth to be passionate about the path that they want to choose. Yes.
Yeah.
So you are very inspirational yourself,
Thank
Aaron.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of great takeaways for our audience. So thank you so much for your time today, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Happy to share. And this is what truly inspires me. I mean, honestly, what we do is really to inspire the next generation. And in turn, we get inspired as well. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you
so
much.